Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Off the Comma. I'm very excited for this week, as I am with every week. But this week, like many episodes, I get the opportunity to meet someone new for the first time. And Lexi, Alexandra, and I are going to be having a great conversation today. We're going to be adding Lexi to our community of storytellers here on Off the Comma. And I'm really excited. We've been chatting a little bit before we started the recording. So I'm really excited to hear more about her story because I'm already really clicking with some of the stories we've been telling so far. And of course, as I was telling her, as someone who is kind of like a self-proclaimed organizer, I am just in awe of the organization behind her as well. So I'll let her speak to that if she chooses to later on. So, Lexi, I'm going to stop rambling and bring you in because today is all about you. So, welcome to the podcast. And why don't we start with introductions? I'll let you introduce yourself. Why don't you start with, Lexi, how would you like to be known?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm Lexi Reid. It's short for Alexandra. So I would basically say I'm a combination of three things these days. I'm a scientist by
Mm,
training, I'm an artist by nature, and I am a coach. And that's part of my lifelong learning is to become a better coach and basically help my clients. So
mm, mm,
and it's been kind of not necessarily a straightforward path to that. As a child, I was very creative. My parents encouraged, they pinned up the paintings all over the fridge. But when it came to going off to university, I'd been a very strong science and arts all the way through high school, and then my parents were like, well, we'd strongly encourage you to pick something with a job at the end of it.
mm, mm.
So I went into biology. I did a bachelor's, I did a master's, I did a PhD, I did a postdoc. I did a lot of school, all
Mm.
in sciences. And I kind of parked my art to the side. And it wasn't until my kids were pretty much school age that I actually came back to it. And yeah, I felt very rusty because, I hadn't touched art supplies in probably a good 10 plus years if you count all the schooling plus raising kids.
Mm,
And so that was interesting is getting reconnected with my creativity and very much being a beginner again. And then also realizing I had a slight addiction to buying art supplies, which you can guess from my studio.
mm.
But also having been a scientist and having, keep all your chemicals and everything, organized because you didn't want to screw up your experiments. I kind of brought that organization level into my studio because I am a mixed media artist. I play with everything from drawing materials to painting to collage. So it's, yeah, everything kind of needs a home depending
Hmm.
on how inspiration strikes me. And
Nice.
that leads me into the coaching, I guess. So as I mentioned, I had a science background, but I got away from doing what we call the wet lab stuff, like actually doing the experiments in the lab. I ended up going to a not for profit. I went to the federal government and helped with reviewing grants for both professors and companies looking to do research. And that led me to a corporate job where, again, I started in business development and then sort of moved over to quality and regulatory side of things. So
Mhm.
quite intense. That was where, again, the eye for detail, the technical expertise. And that kind of led me to experiencing burnout, which I'm sure we'll touch on more, and
Mhm.
learning to deal with that. And that those are the women that I work with, the ones who are in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, very much my background. I can sympathize, I can empathize with the challenges they're facing, and I try to bring creativity and play back into their life to help them deal with stress and, you know, don't occur burnout, basically.
Hmm. I'm so looking forward to hearing your story and how so many of these things kind of pull forward into your story. But just even what you've shared with us so far, it just strikes me as I think about some of the preconceptions that I had growing up, right? And then at this point in my life, and people that I've met, including yourself, it's like there's a science to art, and there is art in every science, right? I'm kind of hearing that. And I even think about, my own ex who was, crunched numbers by day and was just tremendously good at budgets and accounting and planning and so forth, and yet was a musician and a gardener and a cook and so forth. And it just always blew my mind because for many years I thought it was one or the other. And yet, numbers have their own artistic expression, and art can be sometimes boiled down to mathematical equations and so forth. So it's cool to see you describe how those parts of you show up in both, right?
Oh,
So,
definitely. When I did science, I did a lot of microscopy. So I used a confocal laser scanning microscopy, and
mm,
basically, it's very intense laser beam that scans over the cells, and I'd get these beautiful. I was using green fluorescent protein (GFP), so it glows bright green under UV light. And so I'd get these beautiful images of cells and proteins moving through the cells. So that was
mm,
kind of my, I guess, visual creative output when I was doing the
nice.
science. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love doing microscopy. I love getting those pictures of what was happening in real time in the cells. So
Mm,
that
mm,
that
mm,
kind of
mm, mm.
fulfilled, maybe that's what fulfilled the art part of me for so long, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's like, snowflakes and so forth, or the patterns in leaves. One who doesn't even feel artistic need look only to nature to be, immersed in art, right?
Oh yeah, nature is a huge source of inspiration for me, especially where I live. I think we chat a little bit about being here on the west coast of Vancouver Island. It's pretty special. We've got forests, oceans, mountains, you name it. It's we're
Mm,
pretty lucky here.
all of it. All of it. Lexi, let's get into your stories so I can give you the opportunity to expand. And I know we'll hear more, share more as much as you want. Before we get into the 5 questions, one of the things that I always ask every guest is, as you think ahead to the next 30, 35 minutes or so telling your story with us today, what would be your intention for yourself?
Definitely. I just love sharing my story because it lets people see other possibilities. Both the women who've listened to these podcasts and suddenly reach out to me because they're like, "Oh, you've had what I've gone through," or "I didn't realize I was the only one." I'm not the only one. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that when somebody listens to this episode, they'll reach out to me.
Mm.
So that's why I like doing these podcasts.
Perfect. Well, it's aligned very much with my intention, which is obviously to support you in your intention, create a space where you can share your story with us today. And as with every episode, that there will be people out there who see a little bit of themselves in you and your story, and they'll maybe feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone, and in the best of cases, perhaps even feel inspired or empowered to go out and do something that they've been wanting to do.
Exactly. Can't
Nice.
ask for more than that.
Well, let's jump in. The first question, Lexi, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Definitely, I made some allusion to this, but during the pandemic, the company I was working for, we built medical devices and we won a very large government contract to build emergency ventilators.
Mm,
So, this was during the pandemic before there were, vaccines were readily available or even
hmm
existed. And so, having this contract from the Canadian government, it was basically working 24/7, and we started from design all the way to actually building the first prototypes and getting them, in the hands of the Canadian government to be in the hands readiness for the Canadian public.
mm,
And because I was in quality and regulatory, I basically saw things from the very beginning with the engineers to the very end, helping to inspect, were they labeled correctly? Were there manuals? Did it work?
mm,
Because we always want, we always think of the patient, the end user, their safety is paramount, right?
hmm
But we were working from home and I had two kids that, one in middle school, one in just starting high school. So they both had started new schools.
mm,
And, it was, trying to get the house on Zoom and the internet crashing because everyone was on Zoom. And it was just, I couldn't turn off my brain. Like I couldn't, work was there. I had my desk and my bedroom because my husband had taken the downstairs office and the kids are in their rooms. And it was like,
Hmm.
I couldn't shut off. I was just always thinking about work. And then I found myself, always thinking about work, and then I wouldn't sleep, and then I'd get up early, and then my husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just checking another email. I'm just, I didn't want to miss anything." So,
Mm.
and then I started getting very short tempered with everybody. It was like, it's like I have one nerve left and you're on it right now. And it just I was frazzled, and then it went almost too far. Then I got numb, and everything became sort of just gray. Like I'd go into my studio and I couldn't make anything. Like that was the
Mm.
first sign that, one of many signs that this wasn't just, stress. This had gone, further to a
Way
tipping point.
past.
And it's interesting now looking back at it is I was on an endless Zoom call for, the next thing. Yeah, and it was a group thing, right? And you're seeing 100 little faces on the screen, but we had to be there. And I just started doodling. And I'm not a big doodler because for me, it was always like, well, if I'm not going to make something, why am I wasting my time? Right. That was sort
Hmm.
of the mindset I had from quote, making art. And yet I started realizing that just even doing these simple shapes, just my breathing would slow down, my shoulders relaxed, and I came off the call feeling better. And I thought, okay, this is something interesting. I'm a scientist. Let's look at the data here. And so I started looking into art therapy because I thought, okay, this must be something. And looking into art therapy led me into creativity coaching, which again was a field I
Mm.
hadn't even heard of. And that led me to sort of embracing my medical device side of things. And if you think of your Fitbit, a Fitbit is a wellness device, right? Like it helps you stay healthy as opposed to, getting a shot or using a ventilator, which is a
Mm.
device that's going to either treat you or diagnose you. And so that's where I developed this creative wellness. Like I want to be proactive with my creativity to help offset stress before it becomes burnout.
Mm. Mm.
And so I started experimenting with myself and finding things that worked. And yeah, kind of that's where the big off the comma moment, where was I stuck and how did I find a path forward for me?
Mm. If I may, I'll reflect
Yeah.
a couple of things back to you, and then if anywhere I reflect or misrepresent, just correct me, please. So, I hear so many people sharing their stories and their experiences from the pandemic, and similar sort of angles, right? The working from home could be a challenge, or the working more hours because you're at home could be a challenge. I really appreciate how you're calling attention to the work and rest, or work and creative, or work and social spaces when they overlap, the cognitive effect that it has, right? Like you moved your job into your bedroom, and regardless of what kind of boundaries or rules you may have in place in terms of work hours or what have you, that job is still sitting in your private, quiet space. And clearly, as you described, it's just like kryptonite to Superman, right? It's just pulling on you. It's just pulling on you at all times. So that seemed like it was particularly difficult as you described. I mean, it resulted in, like you said, first, from short tempered, then to just gray and numb. I mean, what an experience to kind of go through that transition. What kind of a time frame was that kind of slide occurred?
It was probably, I would say, and it wasn't, and that's the thing that's very insidious about burnout is it's like the boiling the frog, right? Like you don't notice how bad it is
Mm,
until it's really bad, right? So I
mm-hmm.
would say probably 2 years, all told, two and a
Okay.
half years by the time, like if I'm thinking of like the contract and where we got to in the project, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and we were at home at least that long. So I would say it just ramped up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly I'd say there are fluctuations, like even higher stress moments led to more, like, oh, now we meet with the federal government. We got to have all our ducks in a row, quick, all hands on deck. So there are a lot of also, peaks and valleys within
Mm-hmm.
that. But I would say, the temperature continued increasing over time until,
Mm-hmm.
yep, I was just, frying in my own juices pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, and I know one of the points that you wanted to share with us was the kind of the creative outlet and the discovery of how you wrote it down, the how you described it, and I wrote it down, the art therapy. I just wanted to explore a few more minutes, kind of before we go into the how you started to come off the comma. So, well, no, actually, let me ask the second question of the five, and then I'm going to let you expand on the story. What's happening in here is I have a bunch of different questions, and I'm like, which direction do I want to go? And I know you can appreciate that from the coaching side of you. Let me jump into the second question. The question is, uh, in addition to what you've already shared with us, as you look back at that moment that you sat on the comma, what did that create for you? I feel like you kind of answered that, but expand and feel free to go backwards into your story as much as you want to.
Yeah. So definitely that feeling of, you know, pressure building and pressure to the point where when you can't let it out, almost just, I think that's where it's sort of flatlined for me. That's where the numbness came. It's like, okay,
Mm,
I can't yell at everybody all the time. So I'm just gonna like squelch it, right? I'm gonna put it down in a box. But if I put it down in the box, I put almost all the feelings in the box.
mm,
And again, a lot of this is hindsight, looking back at things. Like when you're in it, you're not saying, "Oh, look, I'm putting all my feelings in a box." It's like maybe I wasn't that aware, but that's what I was doing, right? If I can't deal
hmm
with this one, I'm just going to throw them all in the box because that'll just let me persevere, right? Because at that time, I didn't see a way of not continuing forward. I was a professional. I had commitments both to my family and to work, and so it's like, okay, I'm just going to like lock it all down and
mm,
get her done basically.
mm,
And where, suddenly where that thread came from, like that simple act of just, doodling on a phone call and suddenly going, oh, I feel better and I didn't do much. So what does this mean? And
yeah.
for me, often I get asked, what's the difference between therapy and coaching? And, my background, I used to be a competitive swimmer, I was a lifeguard. And so I had both a swim coach, but I also taught kids how to swim.
hmm
And the interesting thing for me, if you think of, being in the pool and where therapy is the analogy, it's the person thrashing around, they're in the deep end, they're totally panicked, they're freaked out. They are doing, the typical looking like they're climbing the ladder. So as a lifeguard, you're like, okay, that person's in trouble. I need to get them to the side of the pool and, deal with whatever trauma they're dealing with.
hmm
Whereas coaching is okay, I can see the person can swim. They've got an okay stroke, but let's work on refining the stroke. Let's make it more efficient. Let's work on their breathing, right? Like, and you can take it each piece in turn. Today we're going to work on this. Today we're going to work on that. And the goal is to be faster, quicker, less tired, right? So there's a big difference for me between using creativity as art therapy, where you're dealing with past traumas and you're reflecting, whereas I like to use it as creative wellness, where you're being
mm,
proactive and you're using creativity to see things on paper that move you towards a goal, right? And that's kind of how I try to explain it to people, are like, what's the difference, right? So that's how I like to share it, because I've been in both of those positions, both as the lifeguard and as being coached for swimming.
mm. I love how you explain that. I'm not going to go into, we talk about the swimming pool analogy and the drowning person in our coach training as well, but as it relates specifically to the outlet, right, that you came to discover. And I think that's what I was kind of curious about earlier was, this, as you described it, slow boil for 2 years. And then, suddenly here's this epiphany with the doodles. And now I have an outlet I can start exploring. I want to acknowledge how it seems like that 2 years was such a high pressure and kind of slowly building stressful window to then now, wow, here's another option for me. Clearly, you had strategies during your 2 years of things you were trying to do to, you know, release the pressure and so forth. It just is so cool and interesting how this one presented itself and then sort of became the way. I'll stop talking. I mean, what's your response to that or thoughts?
Well, it's funny because I mentioned, I'd been a bit dismissive of doodling as a quote fine artist, right? Like if it's, if I'm not going to go and spend time in the studio, if I'm going to like carve out time from my family and my work, I got to go in the studio and make something, right? Like I
Hmm.
got to make something and finish it. And the big difference with, a lot of the exercises I do, I call it, coaching through drawing or visualization on paper. It takes that pressure to perform, and it takes the pressure of making a thing out of it. It's much more going
Mm.
back to playing. Like a lot of the women I work with, I say, look, if you can play Pictionary, you can do this, right? Like it's meant to be, it's like mind mapping, right? Like you're mapping just connections that you see. And a lot of drawing, you can make very personal symbols that short circuit having to describe it in words. Like it's a different
Hmm.
part of a brain tapping in. So, and you can use it very viscerally. Like if you are having a bad day, like just scribbling your, you know, expressions onto the paper. And then it's also a snapshot, right? You can go back and look at it and see how you're feeling a week later, a month later, a year later. Like a lot of the women
Hmm.
that I've worked with, when I followed up with them 3 months later, a year later, they say, I still look back at those things and I get something different out of them. Or if I drew it today, it's a totally different outcome to what I was
Hmm.
drawing then. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how, yeah, you could say it's a very simple thing, and that's what's
Hmm.
I like doing it with a lot of women who said, "Oh, I haven't been creative in so long," or, "I'm not a creative person." I'm like, "Can you draw a stick man? Can you play hangman?" Like it's meant to be a very low bar, but what's interesting is once you kind of open that door, like the creativity juices start flowing and they're
Mm.
like, "Oh, I want to add color to this. Oh, now I'm walking home and I'm looking at things differently on my walk home." Just suddenly when you allow yourself to see things visually in a creative way, it opens a lot more. And it's great for creative problem solving, right? Because
Hmm.
while you're doing one thing, another thought pops into your head. Like it's like, when you're in the shower and suddenly you have all these tremendous ideas. Same thing, like
Right.
you're drawing something on paper and suddenly a different solution to a problem pops up.
I so appreciate even I'm kind of like taking some things from this. I so appreciate how you're talking about this because you in particular are talking about sort of like the visual and physical medium, and yet it also strikes me that we could be having a conversation with another person who's in the auditory medium, who's speaking to people who do have an inclination towards music or just sounds or nature sounds or what have you. We could be having a different conversation, same conversation with somebody in the kitchen, right? Like, what would
Yeah.
happen if you threw these spices or these seasonings in there, or if you cooked it a little longer, or what have you? What I really appreciate about what you're saying is I kind of have a belief because it applies to me, so it must apply to everybody else, right? Like, and I talk to people about this often. Like, I don't have an art, I don't have an outlet, and then I'm constantly curious why. Why is that? And I think a big part of it is I don't allow myself to play, as you said. I won't do it unless it turns into something. Like that whole the way we're trained here in the West is that you don't do anything if it doesn't have some kind of a product or a result at the end. And so that makes it very difficult for me to just go and play, whether it's clay, as you were describing, or whether it's drawing or sketching. Like, what's the point? I have to be able to make something. It has to be good when it's done. And then I won't even bother. So I love how you're challenging that whole thing. And I love the examples that you said, like play with it, and maybe it turns into something entirely different than what you thought it would. And maybe it's a mess, maybe it's not. But then look at what you're noticing on your walk home. I just so appreciate that.
And as I said, the things that people draw, like sometimes there's commonalities, like, a lot of dark colors are moody and broody and lighter colors, brighter colors. Not always.
Hmm.
There's definitely cultural differences that way. But what I find really interesting, like picture a red balloon right now, like, a red balloon on a string. And depending what you've been exposed to, you could be thinking of a Banksy painting, right? Little girl holding the red balloon,
Hmm.
or Stephen King's It with the clown, right?
Hmm.
Two very different interpretations of a red balloon on a string. And everyone's going to have their own personal visual, you know, dictionary, basically, right? Like
Hmm.
there are certain, I'd almost say like pictograms, shorthands. Like a lot of people, when I say, picture your best day, suddenly there's sunshine. Everyone seems to love drawing sunshine. It's they're almost like certain shortcuts for people. But
Hmm.
otherwise, yeah, there are some very personal symbols as well, depending on how you've been exposed to things in your life.
Hmm. It reminds me of, well, two things that come up. And I know you appreciate this as a coach. It's like people will say things are good or bad or right or wrong. And it's like things are what they are. And then we can actually sit and have a conversation about whether you think it's good or bad and what it is about it that makes you think it's good or bad and so on and so forth. Right. There was a company that I did an exercise with many years ago, and they presented a series of photographs, and the whole point was to, what's your interpretation of the photograph? And one was a picture of a newborn baby's face, and the eyes were open, and they were smiling, and most of the people in the room just and cooing and that sort of thing, right? And, oh, it's wonderful, new baby, and yet there were people in the room who said, "Well, that's my fourth one, and I don't know how I'm going to feed it," right?
Yeah.
Or the picture of the tree that had fallen across the driveway. And most people were like, "Oh, that's terrible, blah blah blah, it's bad," and da da da. And then a couple of people in the room said, "Well, that just saved me $900 to have it removed because the city's going to come and take care of it now, right?" So, perspective. I want to come back to you though, and bring it back into your story before we get to the third question. You had this moment, you started doodling, you have this epiphany and this discovery. What changed for you? I mean, you've done a lot of things, as you've said, but what was the biggest kind of impact in that moment and the moments that followed in terms of how you applied what you had now discovered? Like, how did that doodling then go and start to unwind the burnout or affect the burnout, change the burnout, whatever you want to
Yeah.
describe it?
I think you always are recovering from burnout. I think,
Hmm.
it is something that I think once you throw your back out, you're prone to tweaking it. Like and
Hmm.
if you've overdone it. Like if you've done gardening, if you've lifted furniture, or God forbid you reach for something on the top shelf in your closet, you're like, "Oh, nope, did that wrong."
Hmm.
And I think once you've had burnout, you're you're a lot more aware of when you start heading towards it, right? And I think for me, that's the biggest thing. It's like, because it's very easy to settle into the habits that encourage that go, go, go productivity at all cost.
Hmm.
And it's like any regime for wellness or health, right? Like we all know we should eat healthy. We all know we should get sleep. We all know we should get fresh air. But if you don't actually take steps towards those things, they don't magically happen. And for
Mm.
me, I have to be a lot more cognizant of when I'm slipping into those habits like, oh, I'll just finish this email tonight. Oh, no, I'll just stay up a little bit later. Oh, I'm going to get up early and do that thing. And those are the things that lead you back into those paths towards burnout. And so I would say, much like anything, I'm recovering from burnout, right? Because it
Okay.
doesn't disappear, but you're far more aware of. And for me, being able to harness the creativity without that pressure producing, quote, a good piece of art,
Hmm.
that allows me. And now I'm also acting as a curator because I'm creating what I call my creative toolbox.
Hmm.
And that leads to a whole bunch of fun rabbit holes to go down. And for me, it's like, oh, this is a great tool. I'm going to try it. And if I like it, there's a good chance that, that my coaching clients will enjoy it as well. So I love the fact that now it's again like when you're walking home and you're like, you start noticing patterns everywhere. Or if you're thinking
Hmm.
of buying, the one example that always comes up, you're thinking of buying a red car and suddenly you see red cars everywhere because
Hmm.
you've honed your observation skills, right? Like you've tuned into that. I've heard synchronicity is another thing. Like synchronicity is everywhere, but until you tune into that one thing, it's like, oh, that just, I said something and it now landed in my lap.
Hmm.
But it's because you were open for that scenario to happen. So
Yeah.
I think that's for me is, I'm always cautious of falling into bad habits and and times you have to kind of pull yourself up and you're like, oh, you're doing it again, right? But
Hmm.
because now I have clients that I'm thinking both current and future, it's keeping me I guess it's like being a fitness coach, right? Like you don't let yourself out of shape if you're
Get
trying
out
to
of shape.
teach
Yeah.
others, right? So I keep my creativity a lot more honed than I was letting myself before. I guess that's the takeaway here.
Yeah. Okay. And so, I mean, I love that response. And so it sounds like it was an evolution then from the doodle moment, the doodle epiphany to then kind of building yourself back, resilience from burnout, or even just dealing with the burnout that you were having to live through in the moment. What were some of the steps that you started to take from that doodle moment to regain control, to apply the art therapy for yourself?
Well, I let myself back into the studio and took the pressure off of needing to make something finished, right?
Mm,
Like I could just come in and make collage paper, right? I could just paint on paper, just enjoy the act of putting color on paper, and then I just make a stack of it, right? Like a whole bunch of rainbow colored paper, but it was just enjoyable just to like play, right?
mm-hmm,
And for me, it took the pressure off of, oh God, I used to do a lot of shows and it was like, okay, I need to get these things done because I'm going to be at a show on the weekend. I got to have them finished and they got to be framed and da, 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 right? Like
mm-hmm. I
now
don't
it's
think I
like,
can sell that one.
yeah,
Nobody will like this one. Yeah.
yeah, like just taking all of that mind chatter off my plate. It's like, no, you like your supplies, go and enjoy them, spend some time there. And a lot of artists talk about refilling the well, the creative
Mm-hmm,
well, right? And I think when you're in burnout, you can't even access the well. Like the well has got a lid on top and it's like,
mm-hmm.
it's there, but you can't access it. And so this was letting me, basically drip a little bit into the well each time and slowly replenish it, which
Yeah.
I think was probably a lot of burnout is that way too for others, right? Like they need to do something that builds your sense of self back up.
Mm. What you said is so important too. Like you said, like allowing myself to play, allowing myself to, not have to worry about a product on the end. I think about kids and sandboxes, right? You don't go in the sandbox with the intention to preserve it once you've built the castle. You tear it down and you come back another day and do something different, right? I recently had a conversation with a friend about journaling, and sometimes I'll journal, sometimes I don't. But it was like the takeaway for me was what you're saying, right? In a writing sense. I journal and then I journal to get it out of me, but it's not to keep it. It's not to preserve it. It's not to do anything with it. So now when I journal, I have to journal to throw away because what I was getting caught up in was, well, wait a minute, I need to do it in that book and I don't have that book with me today. Or I have my notebook and I'm carrying it with me everywhere. But I want to do it in my Apple Notes so that I always have access to it. But wait, I wrote in the notebook one day and then now I got to retype it into the app. Such bullshit, right? Because I was so
Yes.
focused on the preservation of it or the creation of a system, which by the way, I'm very good at and I enjoy creating systems. But this was not the place for me to be doing that. I needed to be focused on just the writing and getting it out. And then I was keeping all these notebooks. So I thought, oh, someday I'm going to write a book with this. That ain't going to happen. Or if it does, then I won't need those notebooks, right? So I just appreciate what you're sharing about the just play, let it play. And if you choose or need to do something more with it, you still can. Like you said, you can always do shows whenever you want. But at that point, it was just go play, like build the sandcastle and then tear it the hell down.
It is very much about the process. And I think a lot of times, they, the royal they say to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the journey. But again, it's such a common thing to say, but then to actually go and do the process and just enjoy the act of it.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often you'll talk yourself out, oh, I don't have enough time, so I won't even bother, right? Like there's that, or it's not going to be good enough. What a waste of supplies. Why am I wasting, stuff that I spent money on, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
so easy to create that sense of false safety by not doing it at all, right? Whereas if you quote, make yourself go into whatever process that is, whether it's journaling, whether it's just go for a walk around the block, like, oh, but it's raining. Oh, I have to find like, you'll feel better. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is true. If you just get over the hurdle of talking yourself out of it, you will feel better. And then you'll be like,
Mm.
why didn't I do this sooner? But our brains are funny things that way.
Totally. I'm even going backwards into cooking. I'll saute anything I can throw in the skillet and dump a bunch of spices in. I'm good. I will not bake because you have to follow a recipe, right? And I'm like, okay, maybe the takeaway here is go bake, go experiment, and not to throw it away because I don't want to waste food. But you know what? If it comes out a little bit flat, but it's still edible, then go ahead and eat it and learn from it, right? Let me go into the third question. I feel like you shared a lot about this, but it's an opportunity for you to add whatever you would like. And that is, as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, what have you learned about yourself? What are you learning about yourself?
That it's okay just to play, right? Like that's the biggest thing that we forget as adults because quite often we equate play with wasting time, right? Like leisure, right? Like it has this context to it. It's like, oh, leisure time. I don't know how to relax. I'm not being
Mm,
productive, right? So, and for me, that was translating even when I was doing art. Like I still felt like I needed to make a product. It wasn't, I had to give myself permission to just play, right?
mm,
And that is a huge hurdle for a lot of adults is to just because we get conditioned out of it thinking playtime's for kids, right? And even as a mom, half the time I didn't play with my kids as much as I could have, right? Because I was too busy making a meal for them, cleaning their clothes, driving them to school. Like, what do you mean just go to the park and play? I don't have time for that. Like,
mm-hmm.
but that's the part that the kids remember, right? Like, I remember when mom chased us around the playground and pretended she was a dragon, right? Like, that's the thing they're going to grow up remembering, not that they had clean clothes and food and they got driven to school on time.
Totally.
It's those experiential memories, and yet we don't do enough of them, and somehow we talk ourselves again out of them. And
Mm,
I'm too tired, or I just oh next time, or I'll just sit on the bench here. You kids go play, right? It is hard to
mm-hmm.
go back and embrace playfulness because it's been kind of conditioned out of us. And so for me, that was learning to embrace, they inner child, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be dismissive of that because for me, it's as an adult, I should be able to play, right? I should be able to just enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was definitely, and it's something I still struggle with, right? Because, there's that feeling of, am I just wasting my time here? Am I wasting my supplies? And it's like, no, no, this is the process. This is the process that unlocks things for me. So
Right. And it's a little bit crazy in my opinion, the way these things that you just said, the way they're kind of trained into us, right? Like I think about, if it doesn't create something, it doesn't produce something, then it's not worthwhile. And then in most cases, the thing that we then choose to go and do because it's productive isn't even producing something for us. It's producing something for someone else, right? So again, back to this whole, we could get into the whole capitalism of it all and that sort of thing. Um, but it's like, what does playing produce for us? Like, what does it do for us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then physically? I have been practicing, being a child again and playing and just go do things for the sake of it. And I feel like I'm doing a good job of those. But where it still creeps up on me is I'm still inventorying it, right? Oh, today's a play day, but then, and I do, and I go and do the things, but then I'm like trying to keep track of all the things that I did so that I can kind of take credit for it, or did I do enough of it, and that kind of stuff. And it's like, as I hear you talk, I'm like even reflecting back on that. It's like, oh man, like there's still opportunity to just let it go wherever it goes, right?
yeah, we've been conditioned to hit those tick boxes. Oh, tick, tick, tick. I've got my
Mm-hmm.
to-do list. My to-do list of to play today. Yep, check that box, right?
Totally. Lexi, let me ask you the fourth question. What has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma? Maybe what else would you add to that?
That, yeah, again, that permission to make things that are imperfect, right? And
Hmm.
and be okay with that, right? Like not everything is meant to be a thing. And that's hard because like I was an A student. I got the gold stars, I did all the degrees, right? Like it's yeah, there's that sense of why am I not continuing to like push myself up this ladder, right?
Hmm.
And after a while you're like, why am I pushing myself up this ladder? and it's okay to step sideways and pursue something else. And I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like too, right? Because there are parts
Hmm.
of me where it's like, oh, I should go and be, become a guru and have like, 100 plus coaching people all at once. And,
Mm.
so I'm like, no, I like working one on one. I like developing the relationship. Like it's okay to take things at a slower pace. And, but yeah, there's always that push of grow your business, scale, go, go, go.
Hmm.
And for me, it's like, no, it's like I'm trying to value creativity and quality of life. And that's, that's still an evolving process.
And I want to acknowledge you for that because, you've described yourself as a scientist, as an artist, now as an entrepreneur, right? A business owner. And each of those has its own disciplines, behaviors, processes, right? And even kind of desired outcomes or goals, right? And yet I see, I'm not sure what question's about to come out of me here. So let's play. Like I see these three roles and I see the three disciplines and how they influence you. And yet it also seems like what you're describing is then there's the you that kind of goes into each of these roles, right? Like I could sit there and say, well, yeah, when you say give myself permission to make things that are imperfect, well, that must compete with the scientist in you because isn't the scientist always striving for predictability, reliability, dependability, safety, health, quality, et cetera, et cetera. But then where I come back to, and I'll get to my damn point, is like when you take away the roles, what are the parts of you that are left that are kind of defining how you show up in those roles?
Yeah, like I'm definitely, there's arguments of, is a left brain, right brain, like it's just a brain, right? It is
Hmm.
your brain, it's who you are. And I can switch into analytical mode. I can switch into observer mode. I can switch into creative mode. I can switch into play mode. I can switch into questioning mode. I can switch into listening mode. And they're all just modes, right? Like, but those skills play out, throughout, like organization, as we
Hmm.
circle back to that, is I can be organized in the lab. I can be organized in my studio. I can be organized with my clients. What did we talk about last week? What came up for them? Where do we want to go this week? Where do we want to go next week? What are their goals? There's a lot of ways of using quote organization skills,
Hmm.
but it's just where are you channeling them and how are you channeling them?
And yet even in and of itself, it can be playful, right? You can get
Yep.
lost in the organizing of it all and
Oh, you
kind of
can
like
color code to your heart content. Yes, totally.
totally. I did. I remember during the pandemic, I myself was like, what were some of the things I did as a kid so I can re-embrace play? And I was like, I used to play with Legos. I loved Legos, right? So I ordered a bunch of Legos and I didn't order any of the specifically designed play sets. I ordered the general ones where you can make whatever you want. And I ordered two sets of it. So I had plenty of blocks to work with. And then I put them all in a big tub and everything like that. The first time I touched them, I sorted them. I stacked all the 6 block bricks in this color together and I sorted everything. Now, on the one hand, I look back and I'm like, that was just crazy. But you know what? That occupied me and I lost myself in that project. And even though it was like, oh, I was kind of critical the whole time I was doing it, I'm like, but it occupied me for a good 2.5 hours or something like that with, at that time, a couple of glasses of wine or whatever. The
I
second
bet
time
you
I
it, I bet you it felt very satisfying by the time you got to the end.
That is such a good word, right? Satisfying. The second time I touched them, I broke all those apart. And I'm like, you can't do that, Paul. You got to do something fun and playful. The third time I touched them, I ended up building some kind of a little house or something like that. And then I didn't really touch them anytime after that. So that was me being overly analytical about allowing myself to play. But yet, I think each time that I touched them, even though it didn't go the direction I thought it would, I did allow myself to kind of get lost in the organization, right? Or what have you. Yeah. So, Lexi, let's go to the fifth question. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
It definitely means being cautious of old habits that could lead me into burnout. So,
Mm,
definitely I want to keep myself in that creative, happy, willing to explore, willing to play. and not put that pressure on myself to make something quote good, to make something that is a product,
Mm.
to just enjoy the process. And yeah, I'll be continuing to enjoy the process and whatever that looks like, hopefully from here until the end of time, or my
Mm.
time anyway.
I really appreciate what you said because I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. And so many people, I think, are dealing with burnout, whether they're aware of it or whether they're not really conscious of it. How you said, you're kind of always recovering from it. That really rung a bell with me because I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely had hit burnout. And it's like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't have said that I'm still recovering from burnout, but I notice how quick I am to react to when I get too close to that hot burner again, right? So I appreciate what you shared there. How do you notice? You said, I'm cautious about old habits. How do you notice? How do you catch yourself as you're getting too close to that hot burner again?
It comes down to boundaries, right? We boundaries are tricky because again, being a woman, you're carrying a lot of caregiving, right? Like it's
Hmm.
you don't want to let people down, right? And so the first thing that starts happening is you say yes to things that you wish you hadn't, right? So
Mm,
I need to recognize, and the best advice I give to myself and my clients is just to pause before you say yes. And it's still okay to say yes, but you have to make yes with intent. And for me,
mm,
I'm trying to practice those boundaries of giving myself permission to pause and permission to decide whether I want to say yes. And that
mm,
leads to lots of things, right? Like that could lead to, you know, am I willing to take on more clients? Am I willing to take on more projects? Am I willing, like, do I have capacity? And being honest with myself, am I doing this to please somebody else? Or do I really want to do this? Am I excited?
mm,
Right. So it's just having those check-ins with yourself, myself anyway. That's
mm,
how I try to titrate that, not flirting too close with the burnout, right? As you said, that
mm.
hot element, right? We flirt with it and then back away. Okay, nope, nope, that's still hot. Don't touch that, right? And slowly we circle it again and then we back off. So it's just, yeah, those check-ins with ourselves, but not the tick boxes. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, and the boundaries, I think, like you said, are so important too, because no matter what relationship we come to burn out and play and balance and that sort of thing, the world, whether intentional or unintentional, I don't believe the world is necessarily malicious
the
all the
world is
time.
neutral
Yeah.
mostly. it's
Notice how
how
we're
we
like, okay, word choice here, right?
yeah.
But the world will try to pull you in that
Yes.
direction. There's just too many things in the world that will want things from you, with good intentions or otherwise, right? So the world will try to pull you. And so those boundaries and your own awareness are so critical to be able to notice when it's like, yep, not for me, right? Lexi, you and I could talk so much more. I know we're going to check in after we stop recording, but as we kind of bring things to a close, I just again want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. And before we wrap up, there's two things for people who do want to connect with you, want to see kind of what you're up to, follow. Where can people find you? I'll be sure, of course, to put all the links in the show notes so people can click on them. But tell us where are you at?
Yeah, easiest thing is to go to my website. It's Mind Art Wellness. I have a newsletter that comes out weekly, so people can sign up for that. And I have a free creative reset challenge sent by email for 5 days. You get a little video and a set of prompts to do a creative activity. So you get a taste of
Nice.
what it's like to do coaching with me.
Nice. Wonderful. The last thing that we do here is a section I call acknowledgments, and it's because obviously you being here in the whole podcast is about hearing people's stories and taking our hands off people's stories and really kind of lifting up others who are like us. We're all like each other. Um, your story wouldn't be complete if I didn't give you the opportunity to boost or lift up or give a voice to others who matter to you. And this could be causes, it could be organizations, it could be other creators, or even just people in your own sphere of influence who are important to you. Who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll be sure to include them in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to do a shout out for the mental health recovery partners here in the South Island of Vancouver Island. We were chatting about this earlier, but This weekend, they have a tradition of doing a naked bungee jump.
Mm,
I myself am not doing it, though I know others who are, because they are trying to bring awareness of, and they provide a lot of free resources for mental health and wellness. And so I
mm.
just think what they're doing is tremendous, even though you would not catch me jumping off a bridge naked.
Well, and not only that, at the time of this recording, which is going to be a little ways before the episode airs, I mean, what are the temperatures right now there in Victoria? We're still technically in winter.
It's luckily I will say the sun is out and we're just above freezing here, but yeah, oh, it'll be brisk.
Man. I so appreciate though you giving them that acknowledgement and putting in a plug for the event and it seems like like you said like the whole kind of moral I'm taking from the conversation today is and they're allowing things to just play too. So
They're having it at Wild Play in Nanaimo, which is up island. So there you go, wild and play. What more could you ask for?
nice. Wonderful. Well, Lexi, thank you again. You and I will talk some more, but I so appreciate your story. And clearly, I did a lot of talking today. So much of what you were sharing resonated with me, and I know it'll resonate with so many folks out there as well. I feel like you definitely are showing us how so many people are experiencing like they want to return to play because things have just gotten too heavy in the world for so many people in so many ways. And so this would be a great kind of a great point for people to reflect on their own experience right now.
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to take that pause and decide, yeah, what would they like to do to play today?
Love it. Lexi, have a wonderful weekend, and we will be following your journey for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Thank you. What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.